Your people need a leader. You'll need resources to fight this war that Ritson has launched on your people, and I can give them to you. I will use you, and you will use me, and together we'll make this planet safe for both our people.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. The Secret Invasion Episode 6 finale had a big Excalibur and Captain Britain teaser at the end of the episode, confirming Marvel has plans to do the actual team at some point. Those characters with Emilia, Clarke, and Olivia Colman, including Kit Harington's Black Knight and a bunch of other characters they're doing on upcoming series and upcoming movies. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. Ahsoka episodes are starting in a couple weeks, and then we'll get Loki Season 2 episodes. I'll be doing videos for everything. If you felt like Secret Invasion in general was kind of lackluster compared to comic book Secret Invasion, Ahsoka and Loki will probably be some of the best Disney Plus series that they've ever done so far. But careful for spoilers from Secret Invasion if you haven't seen the episodes yet. At the end of the episode, though, Emilia Clarke's guy character kills Gravik with her new Super Skrull powers, having gained the ability to mimic pretty much most of the MCU characters, everyone who was at the final battle in Avengers Endgame, including some of the crazy powerful ones like Thanos, Scarlet Witch, Captain Marvel, Thor. In fact, it's easier to say which power she doesn't have now because Vision, for example, was still dead, and he doesn't have DNA to begin with. He's an android, so he's like the only character whose powers she didn't get. She almost becomes the new most powerful MCU character ever. There's still a couple of characters that are more powerful than her, but in the comics, the Skrulls who could mimic powers like this during the comic book Secret Invasion were limited to using just 4 powers at any given time. That was the way they balanced them out to keep them from getting too OP, and when they were using those powers, they weren't as powerful as the original person that they were copying, and I think that's how they're going to balance Emilia Clarke's character now, say that she's not as powerful as the original versions, just a fractional amount. Instead of going with Nick Fury to his Saber space station, they have a teaser for Sonya Falsworth pulling her own British version of the Nick Fury Iron Man post-credit scene, showing up to recruit Emilia Clarke to a version of Excalibur in the MCU.
Who are you?
A friend of a friend.
Who the hell are you?
Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D.
She also tells her to become the new Skrull Empress, like the new Skrull Khaleesi, to make more Game of Thrones references. We have so many Game of Thrones actors joining the MCU now. Don't worry, I'll get to Kit Harington's Black Knight too, because he's another British character with ties to a lot of the Excalibur characters as well. During the scene, they even play a little Captain Britain theme music, lingering on the moment, just a little so it's obvious that they do intend on paying this team off. We're putting together a new squad. And in the MCU, they'll basically just use this as the British version of the Avengers, so it'll be a little bit different from the comics, but pretty close. Some of the roster will have to be a little bit different, especially at first, just because there's a lot of characters that they haven't gotten even close to introducing yet, particularly the X-Men-based characters. Captain Britain would be like the biggest next character that they would have to introduce, but they've already kind of done that. They already teased him in the MCU. Kit Harington's Black Knight character wasn't on that original comic book team either, but he is a British character and shares a lot of the same characters as Excalibur, so he's a bit of a crossover character. Mostly in Merlin, Morgan Le Fay, the Black Knight's origins go back to Camelot, Knights of the Round Table, the King Arthur Chronicles, which is a big crossover point for the Excalibur team. They even introduced the Excalibur sword during the Eternals movie, including Kit Harington's Black Knight, the Ebony Blade.
Is that the Ebony Blade?
Excalibur.
Arthur always did have a crush on you.
They explained the Eternals lived in actual Camelot for a brief period in the UK during that part of history, revealing that Camelot was a real place in the MCU. Merlin, who created the Ebony Blade, was a real person. He was probably the Sorcerer Supreme of his era. Some of that starts to get into multiverse territory too, like Merlin becomes more of a multiverse character, like a multiverse version of Doctor Strange. Morgan Le Fay, for example, was a real sorceress, who in present day is actually supposed to be played by Aubrey Plaza during the Agatha Coven of Chaos episodes. She's a huge Excalibur villain. The earlier teaser for Captain Britain went back to Avengers Endgame. I talked about this when the movie came out a couple years ago, you probably remember, which was them basically saying that they were doing the character at some point. When Captain America goes back to the 1970s with Iron Man during the time heist, he's inside Peggy Carter's office and hears her mention Agent Braddock is out on a mission. Now, this is meant to be the 1970s, remember, so I'm assuming that it'd be Brian Braddock's either parents or his ancestor at some point, because Brian Braddock is a multiverse character. He does jump around time and space. It could have also been a version of Brian Braddock in this scene. But that's meant to be his real name. He is Brian Braddock. He's kind of like the British version of Captain America, even though his origin story and his powers are completely different. That's the way that people view him. Like, if you're not a big comic book fan, you see him, you say, oh, it's kind of like British Captain America. In reality, he's completely different from Captain America. For those of you that want to see Henry Cavill show up in the MCU, that'd actually be a pretty solid pick for him. Because, for instance, he's not going to play the Sentry. The Sentry is kind of like Marvel's version of a more sinister, bent Superman, like a crazy version of Superman. They're supposed to already be using Stephen Yeun as a version of that character in the Thunderbolts movie. We'll meet MCU Sentry during Thunderbolts, though. Captain Britain's origin story starts with him as just a normal kid born in the UK to an aristocratic family that had fallen on hard times and lost their fortune. As a child, he studied science. His sister is actually Psylocke of the X-Men, so that's why Excalibur is a big X-Men-based team. His parents were killed in a mysterious, quote-unquote mysterious, lab accident under foul play. He starts studying at the Darkmoor Nuclear Research Center later in life, gets attacked by the Reaver, and as he's escaping, he crashes his motorcycle and is visited by Merlin and his daughter Roma, who offer him a chance to become Captain Britain, offering to heal him and prevent him from dying if he agrees. They give him the choice of the Amulet of Right or the Sword of Might. He rejects the sword and chooses the amulet, and it gives him the powers of Captain Britain, healing him. He becomes part of the Captain Britain Corps, a multiversal team run by Merlin's daughter, who are like a more righteous version of the TVA, protecting reality across the multiverse from different threats. Then we get to the formation of the Excalibur team. So this actually formed in the wake of an X-Men-based event called Fall of the X-Men, where Captain Britain, Kitty Pryde, Nightcrawler, Shadowcat, and Magon, who was Captain Britain's girlfriend at the time, band together to save Rachel Summers, daughter of Cyclops and Jean Grey. Once they successfully save her, they decide to carry on the legacy of the X-Men by forming Excalibur. Very apropos, they're introducing the Rachel Summers character during the new X-Men the Animated Series season at the beginning of next year, X-Men 97 Season 1 basically. They released a teaser at Comic-Con that they didn't post online, and in the clip, Jean Grey was pregnant with Rachel Summers. When Excalibur bands together, they use the Excalibur sword to create a secret base for themselves called the Lighthouse that Merlin could also control. Eventually, they do wind up destroying that base so that they could free themselves from Merlin's control, because in that scenario, he was kind of like a version of Nick Fury for the Avengers team, having more influence over them. Obviously, the MCU version of the team would be very different, much closer to a British version of the Avengers, the way they're pitching it during the end of Secret Invasion here. Like Sonya Fallsworth would be their version of Nick Fury, and they'd be more of an Earth-based team, maybe with some multiversal stuff, but probably not quite as crazy as the comic book version of the team. But we are in the middle of this multiverse saga, like we're heading to Avengers 6 Secret Wars. What they might do, though, because there's a lot of characters that are on this team that haven't been introduced yet, particularly X-Men characters, they might wait till after Secret Wars to actually do the team. They haven't said when they plan on doing a legit version of Captain Britain or introducing an actor to actually play the character. For example, like Henry Cavill would be a solid pick for that. There's been a lot of talk about Marvel using Secret Wars to do a soft reboot of the MCU in general. I don't think they'll do a complete reboot, but they might retune a couple things. And the whole idea is that Marvel Phase 4, 5, and 6 have been the multiverse saga. They're culminating in Avengers Secret Wars. I think Marvel Phase 7 will begin the mutant saga, for example, like a very X-Men themed type of saga. We'll start to see Easter eggs and references to that during Deadpool 3 when they bring back all the classic X-Men actors as sort of like a swan song to their characters, but some of them will be back in Avengers Secret Wars. And even before they do the legit version of the Excalibur team together, Emilia Clarke, Kit Harington's Black Knight, will be back in cameos during Marvel Phase 6 at some point. This would also be the way to do a big reunion between those two characters on screen, like more Game of Thrones actors in the MCU. They did a small version of that during the Eternals movie when you have Richard Madden having a reunion with Kit Harington on screen.
Next time I see you, you'll be all in black. It was always my color.
The whole joke about that is that when they saw each other again, he had become the Black Knight. It was just in a completely different cinematic universe. One of the reasons why I think they're also waiting on doing a ton of Black Knight-related stuff is because Kit Harington has that Jon Snow Game of Thrones sequel that he's trying to develop. It sounds like that's more of a priority to him than doing a bunch of Marvel stuff right now. He was supposed to show up in the Blade movie again, but they've completely changed what that movie is going to be, so he's not going to be in the new version of the Blade movie. Let me know in the comments, they do a version of Excalibur in the MCU, who do you want to be on that original team, or do you just want them to wait until after Avengers Secret Wars so they can do a more legit version of the comic book original team with a bunch of those X-Men characters? There's a bunch of stuff that I'm working on and a bunch of stuff that'll be happening in the next week. I'll try to do videos for everything. Be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss any of that. Click here for my full Secret Invasion Episode 6 finale video, and click here for all my Comic-Con trailers. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.